Dr. Kris, welcome back.
Hey, Steve, how are you today?
I'm well.
Good.
Thanks everybody for joining Dr. Kris with Resurge Clinic. We every week we sit here and get to talk about cool stuff, peptides, anti-aging, nutrition, all the things that you want to learn about when you're wanting to take more charge of your health. And so Dr. Kris is starting to be like the voice of the folks that want to do better with their health, want to do better with how they feel and age. So Dr. Kris, we appreciate you. So how are things going?
It's been a good week. Weather's been good down here. We got a little rain earlier in the week, but it's dried out now, so we're doing good. It also seems that COVID in our area is still, high, but it's going down. Our practice, thank goodness, has been a little bit less about COVID in the last couple of weeks, and getting a little bit more back into just general wellness. So that's nice. I got my second COVID vaccine on Monday, and I can report back that the after effects were possibly a little bit more than I actually thought they would be. About 12 hours after the shot, I had a low-grade temp and just generally felt pretty poorly for about 36 hours. But yesterday morning, I woke up back to normal, been fine since, and that's a small price to pay if we get the immunity that we believe we'll get from it.
Yeah, that's interesting. A lot of people are getting those now, and of course there's different versions, and so they're seeing reactions in some ways. So I was curious how you were doing.
Yeah, and things are still looking pretty good with the vaccine. I know Moderna is doing a little bit tweaking of their formula. Pfizer's appears to still be in good shape. I think ultimately what we're going to see here is that, at least possibly for the next 12 months to 18 months, we're probably going to see a slight tweaking for a booster shot probably at some point for these different variants as they come out. We still believe that even with the vaccine, that even if you get sick from COVID or from one of these variants, that it won't be as severe of a case as what some people experience. So that's it really is funny when I and I really try to talk to every one of my patients when they come in about the vaccine. I just feel like it's what we're supposed to do as providers right now. And you get really two types of patients. I'm for sure want to get it as soon as I can, or there's no way in hell I'm getting that shot. And there's not a whole lot of people in between. So I try to educate those few that are in between, and I try to tweeze out with those ones that are really against it, why they're against it. Most of the time there's no science behind it. They're just uneducated on the shot and they're scared, really. Mm-hmm. But that's one of the things they'll throw at me. Well, there's a new variant, so I shouldn't. Why even take it? There's just going to be something new. Well, first of all, that's the minority of what's out there. That's the one thing. The second thing is that we do believe this immunization will still work against the M spike on the cell membrane of the COVID virus, and that you still will have immunity. And worst case scenario, if you do get it, it'll be dramatically less than if you hadn't got it before, if you'd gotten it on your own. And I still try to remind patients the reason why we're getting this vaccine is not only to try to protect ourselves, but to be a good citizen, basically protect others. If I were to get COVID and if I were to give it to an 88-year-old little lady and she dies from it, it's not necessarily my fault, but boy, that's a lot of guilt to carry around if you knew that that's what happened. And so one of my farmers said it best, ranchers actually. He came in and I was talking with him, and I was for sure he was going to go that way of, I'm not taking that shot. And he goes, oh yeah, man, I already signed up for it. I'm getting it next week. And I was like, oh, awesome. He goes, it's no different. We do that to cows all the time. We go out there, we, give them a little dose of a disease and they feel sick for a day or two. You can tell they don't eat much and then they're fine. He goes, man, I'm down with vaccines. And so I was like, golly, I wish all of my patients were that easy to convince. But, vaccines, if they're going to cause a problem, they do it when you get them. They don't cause problems 10 years down the road. And that seems to be the thing I keep hearing over and over. Well, you don't know what it's going to do in 10 years. Yeah, I do know what it's going to do in 10 years. Nothing. It's creating that immune response right now. And if you're going to have a problem, which is really worst case scenario, an allergic reaction, it's going to happen now. It's not going to happen in 10 years. As we've stated over and over, this is a messenger RNA vaccine. It's not a DNA vaccine. It's not incorporating into your DNA. It's impossible. You'll be fine. You'll live. And hopefully you'll actually live because you won't get COVID. And you know, even though the numbers aren't high, there are people that truly die from COVID. But last thing I'll say, and I'll get off the vaccine kick because it's a hot topic for me. Way too many people underestimate the effects of post-COVID syndrome. Mm. And there are lots. Yes, I'll agree. The stats of death, unless you're geriatric, is not very high. The stats of post-COVID syndrome, which is actually not tracked, but from what I'm seeing in my practice and other physicians, can be quite high, can sometimes be in that 20-25% range. And post-COVID syndrome is real. You know, people are having chronic headaches, memory loss, shortness of breath. We just unfortunately had a local physician have to retire because of COVID because now he's oxygen dependent. This is not unheard of. And so that's when patients are like, it doesn't do that much. I'll live through it. Well, yeah, you might, but you also might drag an oxygen tank behind you for the rest of your life. So just other things to think about with the vaccine.
Well, that's a good segue when we're wanting to be proactive and do the things that we can to avoid whatever is coming our way, whether it be COVID or other sicknesses. So we wanted to talk today. It's the start of a new year, and we want to talk about nutrition, about hormones, about peptides, and about exercise. And I just want to say again, you know, that these conversations that we have are intended as educational, and you should always consult your physician before changing your medical program. But where every one of these conversations lead, what I really enjoy and the thing that I've learned the most, and it's really helped me see the right perspective, is that healthy cells communicate better with other cells, and everything goes back to the cellular level. So everything that you want to talk about today, Dr. Kris, impacts the health of your cells.
Absolutely. And, you know, as I tell my patients, it sounds too simple to be true, but it's not. It is true. And so, you know, if we're made up of, I think I saw a stat the other day, on average, 75 trillion cells. And if our 75 on average trillion cells are healthy, active, and communicating properly with each other, there's simply no way we can't be healthier when that happens. Unfortunately, as we age, and I'm sure we're about to get into some of the things that cause this problem, but as we age and these cells aren't as healthy, they start not communicating properly. They start not being able to repair themselves properly. We can get into cell senescence, as we've talked about before, which is where the cell can't repair itself, but also doesn't kill itself, and apoptosis, and kind of hangs out and can become a not so healthy cell and cause bad things down the road. And so the thing that, like, I talk with my patients about is there's so many little things that we can do to improve our overall health. Many of them are very inexpensive. Heck, I'm doing one of them right now as I'm dropping Alka-Seltzer Gold into my water because I forgot to do it earlier. Man, you're good. Look how quick that happened. And so Alka-Seltzer Gold is basically, and as we always state over and over, it's not Alka-Seltzer, it's Alka-Seltzer Gold. Locally, if you're one of my local patients, they actually sell it at a local pharmacy called Tackett's here in town because evidently I've talked about it enough, they started carrying it. But otherwise, you got to go to Amazon to get it. Very inexpensive. And all it is basically baking soda in a tablet. It actually is right there. I'm popping them into my water right now. And you can do baking soda. You could do a teaspoon of baking soda into your water. It just gets a little messy. That's why most of us like the Alka-Seltzer Gold. The powdered stuff that everybody has for their fridge or whatever just can get a little messy. But what it's basically doing is bad things, bacteria, viruses, do not like basic environments. They like acidic environments. And our body kind of, over time, especially shifts a little bit more acidic. and that intracellular pH can start creeping up a little bit into the acidic range. And by doing something as simple as baking powder, you can bring down that intracellular pH just a tiny bit, but that tiny bit makes all the difference in your cell's immune system and its ability to fight off these infections. It's just, we've talked about it before, you know, how they fought the Spanish flu back at the turn of the century was baking soda. And believe it or not, I think they probably did a great job with that. And it's still true today. So I think we should do it for wellness, but especially right now during COVID, and especially if you have COVID, it's part of my protocol for treating COVID. It's not the only thing, but it is part of my protocol of treating COVID.
Yeah, that really helped me understand, you know, if you're increasing your pH by taking the baking soda, what's happening inside the cell is you're just making that environment of the cell more alkaline. And guess what the virus doesn't want? It doesn't want an alkaline environment. It prefers an acid environment. So for my little novice understanding of health, that really made a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I like to tell my patients is think of the inside of the cell kind of like your living room. We do not want the virus and the bacteria to be nice and comfy and have their nice favorite chair. We want to make that environment very uncomfortable for them. So, you know, the basic environment is like, you know, making them stand the whole time or something like that, but making them uncomfortable so they don't want to be there. It's that simple, and the cell simply can function properly and communicate better with that slight change in pH of the cell.
A lot of people talk about apple cider vinegar as a way to also help impact the environment or increase the health of your cells correctly, right? Wrong?
Yeah, some people do it. I have to say that I'm not as big a fan with that. You actually got to think that that's actually an acid that you're adding to the body. They use it more as a detoxifier. I've never been able to find any studies that really show any thing behind that I believe is medically prudent. But, you know, to each their own on that. It's not something, though, that I talk about with my patients.
Well, I just think, you know, though it tastes awful, so it must be good for you.
It doesn't taste as bad as ketone esters, though.
So let's talk about nutrition. So I keep seeing stuff in the news about vitamin D, vitamin zinc, and some other things that you can be taking to build up your resistance or make your cells more healthy.
So vitamin-wise, the ones that for immunity that I'm recommending currently is vitamin C, vitamin D, and zinc. And then if and we'll come back to that. And then if you actively have COVID or you know you've been exposed, we typically add in quercetin and melatonin at night. And quercetin is a vitamin that basically helps zinc absorb a little bit better. I think we have to be, I always, as a physician, I'm trying to remember how many things have I just told this patient to take, because I think there's a cutoff. I know there is for me. And, you know, we're just talking about immune system. We haven't even gotten into like things I do with them with hormones and things like that. And I just feel like if I have them on like 9 different vitamins, or supplements, they're probably not going to do all of them. So I try to be really cautious or, you know, just give them the bare bones of what I believe they need. And, you know, an antioxidant like vitamin C, and this is always a great topic, I think you can overdo antioxidants. Okay. You know, you are actually supposed to have some oxidants in our body to do some of our dirty work. The problem is when an oxidant becomes too high, that's when you need antioxidants to try to break it down. But, you know, one of the things that we kind of see in cellular medicine is some people take such high doses of antioxidants on such a consistent dosing that they actually, in a weird way, can make them sick. They lower their immune system because there's this homeostatic levels that you need of oxidants and antioxidants. And if you overload the system with 10 times too much antioxidants, then your oxidants now become depleted and you become, you know, poor immune system. Whereas if vice versa is there, we've got 10 times the oxidants versus antioxidants, the same thing can happen. And unfortunately, there's no blood test or anything like that that's, that you can really do about that. Sometimes I'll ask just to see a patient's, show me everything you're taking, and you'll be amazed at how many different things they can be taking that can, somewhat counteract each other. So it's just those providers out there. I think it's just really important to know every single thing a person's putting in their mouth when it comes to supplements and medications.
Sometimes when a physician asks me, what vitamins you're taking, I'm a little hesitant to say, because I don't think most physicians understand vitamins or not necessarily pro-vitamin. And so that I'm always in this area of like uncertainty on, do they really appreciate vitamins, or are they just asking that question because it's a mandatory question?
Yeah, I think there's a little bit of all that in there. I think it just depends on your provider. I would say early on in my career, I would just document it and move on. I didn't really know what to do with it, to be real honest with you. And it took later in my career to start understanding exactly what we're trying to do with the different supplements. I know that the main reason that I do it is because I'm always amazed at how many things I believe my patients are kind of just wasting their money on.
Yeah.
And possibly not even helping themselves, and even possibly making their situation worse. And the other thing I always try to really hammer onto my patients is that the supplement market in the United States is an unregulated market. And I love Amazon for a lot of stuff. For my supplements is not what I love it for, unless you know the brand that you're buying. And most of the really good brands are not sold on Amazon. And so that's just one of the things. I actually did a lecture last week with a few other docs, and one of the docs that was with us, he talked about how in his practice, he actually makes his patients sign a contract that says, not only will you take the supplements I recommend, but you can only get them from me. And I'm not going to go that far in my practice, but I understand his point, because he's like, they go and they see this supplement on Amazon that they believe is equivalent, and it's 20% cheaper, and they buy it, but then they don't get the results of what we're doing because they're not taking the right supplement. But yet, who's the guy that they blame at the end of the day for it not working? Me. And so I think it's just my job, and it's actually one of our 2021 missions to actually educate our patients more on why buying a pharmaceutical grade supplement is so important. And also, when I put someone on a supplement, I want to know that they understand when they leave the office why we just did that, versus just take this stuff. You know what I mean? Like, here, just take these 5 things and go. And I'm surprised when I talk to my patients about supplements, they're like, you're the first doctor that ever really talked to me about why I need to do this. And so I'm kind of surprised that I guess that there's just this lack of education sometimes.
Got a comment from Lorinda that says truth. And I think this really highlights the problem is, where if you are wanting to be proactive and do something good for your health, you're reading, you're researching. But the problem is you're guessing, because you don't have this basis to start from, or labs to kind of measure what you really need and what you should be taking. And I think that's one of the things that's really important about these conversations that we're having, is that you have a way to help someone come up with a strategy and a plan to do better and to optimize these things. And
everything has to be individualized, even though we talk in generalities on this podcast, because we have to. Everything has to be individualized. And as I say, I've got lots of ideas. I need to actually sit the person down, see what their lifestyle looks like. Where can we tweak? What can we not tweak? What are their restrictions? What are their religious beliefs? What will they do and what will they not do? Because we all have those things. I think it was a couple of podcasts ago when I said, eat more green vegetables. And I think my wife chimed in like, yeah, right. Because I don't eat a lot of green vegetables, but I take my DIM to try to counteract that. We all have restrictions. We all have limitations and likes and dislikes. And it's my job as a provider to do my best to work with those. Of course, the patient has to be flexible at the end of the day. We can't be set in our ways and expect everything to improve. And then, I think I ventured away from it, with nutrition, that's where it's really important that anyone that's struggling with nutrition, and that's most of us, I have I'm either locked in or I'm locked out when it comes to my nutrition. Actually, in all seriousness, most of the time I do pretty well. I can just do better at times, and I think we all can. But it's just really important to, like, for an example, I saw a young man yesterday, and we did actually food sensitivity testing on him. He happened to be gluten allergic, and here's a young man that's been gaining weight and having some issues, and we find out, oh, there's a gluten allergy, and that's something that we can treat. We can put him on a fairly gluten-free diet, and then work around that to getting better. If we hadn't done food sensitivity testing, though, we wouldn't know that.
Right.
And a lot of times that's what happens with a lot of patients who are eating healthy, not seeing results, is they could have a food sensitivity. But for the general public, for most of my patients who are young and healthy and doing well, we generally like to kind of push them towards a more low carbohydrate, low glycemic diet, because most of us have too much sugar in our diet. And a lot of us get it naturally through foods that we're eating. I always like to talk about the bread, rice, pasta, corn, potatoes, trying to limit those in our diet, and, getting those good fats up, and a moderate amount of good protein, and which that's a really easy lifestyle to follow. And then just kind of start there and see where it takes us diet-wise. We tweak it depending on, what the person's likes, dislikes, and what they're willing to eat, not eat, that sort of thing.
So the things that we're talking about are all the unsexy things of improving your health, like exercise, eating better, intermittent fasting. These are things like, when we started talking about fasting, I thought, no, that's something that I can't do, or that would seem too hard. But actually, when you started to talk about how you should go about it, it's not that hard. I'm amazed at how often I do it, and I'm not really trying.
Yeah, intermittent fasting is such an amazing thing. And the few things that you just rattled off, the nice thing about them is they don't cost anything. Unless you go get a trainer. I mean, most of that stuff is either cost-free or very inexpensive to do. It can make a tremendous change. And I will always stick by, what are the two most important things that you can do for your health? Nutrition and exercise. Still, I will always stick with that. Everything that we talk about is trying to augment exercise and nutrition. If you're only going to do one thing in your life, but you'll do it really well, I would tell you just diet. Just simply make your diet low inflammatory, low carbohydrate, and go for it. And I think you'll do quite well with just doing that. The problem is most of us won't stick with that nutrition all the time. We'll fall on and off that wagon. But intermittent fasting is something that actually I got introduced to it by Maury, who we've had on before a few years ago. And I'd heard about it. I wasn't real comfortable with it. I didn't know what to really, I didn't think it really worked, to be honest with you, until I started looking at the studies, and then started going to a few lectures and hearing national experts talk about it. And, it really makes a tremendous difference in people's lives. It's easy to do. It's 16 continuous hours with nothing but water, black coffee, unsweet tea, no artificial sweeteners, no calories. And I'm amazed how many people kind of intermittent fast, but don't really. Like, I just talked to a new patient yesterday. He's like, well, I kind of do that. And then when I tweezed it out, she was having a fruit smoothie in the morning, and that was it. And I'm like, well, just cut that smoothie out and you're fasting. And she's like, oh, I could do that. That's no big deal. It's only like a 200-calorie smoothie. And I'm like, yeah. I said, because you're not doing it until you take that out. And I assume, and she's had a little weight gain over the last 6 months, I think she'll do quite well with it. Boost the immune system. Your brain works better. Your athletic performance goes up. There's no way you would have convinced me 5 years ago that I could work out and lift weights fasting and do well, but you can. And I do, and my patients do as well. And we just, we kind of get told things and they become the gospel, and we have a hard time breaking those trends. And I think all of us have heard that if you're going to go to the gym, you need to do nutrition before and post workout. And don't get me wrong, there's some occasions for that. If I'm trying to gain muscle and that's my only goal, okay. but most of us, we're trying to lose fat, trying to get more, leaner, and intermittent fasting works great for that.
So, as I say, when you help me understand that cellular health is the most important thing, everything goes back to the cellular level. How does intermittent fasting impact your cellular health?
Yeah, so I'll take it a step further and say, in my opinion, everything goes back to the immune system. And if your immune system is functioning properly, if you're creating proper T cells and B cells, because those things do wane as we get older, those things are affected also negatively by our environment. So, when we're not eating right, when we're not exercising, when we're, like I said, eating a cheeseburger instead of eating something that's good for us, we're affecting that. I believe one thing that we don't talk about enough is it's affected by our lack of sleep or lack of quality sleep, something I'm really focusing a lot more on here lately with my patients. All of those things negatively affect our cellular function, our immune system, our production of T cells and B cells. So anything that promotes that immune system to modulate, to improve, is going to ultimately, at the same time, improve our cellular function. And that's exactly what intermittent fasting does. It basically, I always kind of equate to my patients, it gives your body time to rest. It gives time to things to clean things up, to detoxify, so that everything can function better. It also, when you're intermittent fasting for a consistent period for the 16 hours, it causes your insulin levels to drop to very low levels. And because insulin, it's always important that patients understand insulin, it basically counteracts our growth hormone. And our growth hormone does most of its work for actual metabolism while we sleep, along with our circadian rhythm. Another reason why we should be sleeping well, but also, like I always say, that mistake that so many people make, go eat the 2 cookies on the way to the bed to go to sleep at night. So when I should have already been fasting a couple of hours, most likely, I should have already started my fast. The fast does a few things. If they start fasting at about 8 o'clock, it cuts out that bedtime snacking, which kills most guys. I find it to be a bigger problem in guys than girls. I'm sure there's a few ladies that do it too, though. They eat those 2 cookies on the way to bed, and then a couple hours later, they get a dumping of sugar. Well, actually, not even a couple hours later. Hour and a half later, they get a dumping of sugar into their bloodstream. They get a spike in their insulin levels to break down their blood sugar. And while all that's happening, poor growth hormones hanging out in the background, unable to do its job. And so that's why that's kind of how one of the main ways that intermittent fasting works. And long story short, between our immune system and between insulin resistance, if you can keep your immune system working properly, if you can keep insulin resistance away, your chance of good health for a long period of time is excellent, in my opinion.
We're talking with Dr. Kris Wusterhausen of the Resurge Clinic today, and we're discussing intermittent fasting. I want to say her name correctly. Anais Mendoza says intermittent fasting is my favorite, and it's super easy. At first, it doesn't sound like it, but it really is easier than you make it out to be. So let's talk about HIIT workouts, high intensity interval training. That's, when I went to high school, I learned how to exercise like you would in high school. But as you age, you need to change that. Talk to us a little bit about HIIT workouts.
So first of all, what is a HIIT workout? So it's a high intensity interval training workout. So the analogy I always use with my patients is think about a famous sprinter. I like to use Usain Bolt or Michael Johnson as my example. And most people have heard of one of those 2 guys or both of them. They're, okay, I can envision in my brain who that is. And I go, then think about a marathon runner. Which one do you want to look like? And I've yet to have it. God bless all the marathon runners out there, but I have never had one pick a marathon runner, because a marathon runner, when you look at them, they're never like the epitome of health. They carry a little fat on them for the long runs, and they're usually very muscle poor because they simply can't keep muscle on because of how much they're running. But a sprinter, if you think about it, they're made to go really fast for a really short period of time. And that's what a HIIT workout is. A HIIT workout is typically, by definition, is a short workout. Can be anywhere from about 4 minutes to 20, 30 minutes of extreme exercise for 20 seconds and 10 seconds of basically recovery.
Mhm.
And what I try to do in my own workouts, and I'm trying to do better at, is actually 4-minute HIIT workouts prior to my actual workouts. So it's warm up, please warm up. You know, we don't want people blowing hamstrings and things. But once you're warmed up, we will do. We have, like, the main one we do in our gym is, because we have a personal training gym here, is we have a bike called the Assault bike, and it's the nastiest thing I've ever bought. And you basically pedal as hard as you can for 20 seconds. You pedal slowly enough that you keep everything moving forward for 10, and you do that for 4 minutes. Doesn't sound bad until you get about 2 minutes in, and it's pretty rough. But what that does is and I never quite understood this, is what it does is it puts your stem cells very rapidly within your body into what we call a quiescent state. And I always love that term, quiescent. I don't know, that's just a cool word to me. But a quiescent state is basically a readied state. These stem cells are now prepared to do what they need to do. So that then whenever you go and follow it up with maybe your resistance training, because I'll be honest, in what we do, we don't do like consistent cardio exercise. We mix it in with our workouts. So we're doing resistance and cardio at the same time. I'm not the guy that's going to jump on a treadmill and just, run for 40 minutes. It's just not happening. I also could debate with you how healthy that is overall with you. So we then do our 30-minute workout. So now those stem cells are prepped and ready to go to do what they're supposed to in building muscle. And it lowers your chance of injury. It improves the results. But also that HIIT workout has been shown with calorie burning to show a tremendously better calorie burn for even a couple of hours after you get done working out. And I always tell patients, you jump on the treadmill for 30 minutes and you do your, I don't know, let's just pick 4.3 miles per hour with a little bit of incline, and you do it at that steady state for 30 minutes and you jump off of it. Your calorie burn damn near ends when you step off that treadmill. Within 5 minutes, you're back to your normal metabolic rate. You do that sucker for 20 minutes at 20 seconds on, 10 seconds off, you jump off there, you're burning calories for a couple of hours at an increased rate. It's just HIIT workouts if you can. There are some limitations with some patients, but as one of my doctors I train under, everybody can do something. Everybody can figure out some way to do a HIIT workout, darn near. There's very few people that can. If you're in the gym, you can do some form of a HIIT workout. It may not be as good as the guy beside you, but it's still better than nothing, and you work your way up from it.
Yeah, so hard to think of yourself working out for hours, but you can actually kind of start getting into a little thing like that as long as you're okay being exhausted. But it's amazing how much you perspire later, even though you're not doing anything. You feel flushed and you're perspiring. Lorenda says, HIIT workouts makes the workout go so much faster.
Or even after a HIIT workout, you take your shower, you get dressed, and you just feel it for like an hour, hour and a half. Like we did the Filthy 50. I don't know if you've ever done a Filthy 50, but it's, 10 exercises of 50 reps of each one. And, it's one of those workouts that you just despise as you're doing it. But once it's over, you feel so good for the rest of the day. And so it's just those HIIT workouts can really be an amazing result. The biggest thing in the gym that I try to just tell patients is you can't do the same thing every day. You just can't do it. I always felt bad. I don't go to a traditional gym anymore, but when I did, I always felt bad for the guy that would jump on the treadmill, do this. You saw him there every day at 4 o'clock. He did the same exact workout every day, and he looked the same in February, April, July. He never changed. And you just want to go over and tap him on the shoulder and say, man, this is why nothing's changing. But I always figured I'd probably get slugged or something for saying it. But, you feel bad because they're putting the work in. They're just not doing it the right way. And sometimes people are working harder in the gym than they need to be real honest with you. They're just doing it all the incorrect way. So anyway, that's why I believe a proper trainer even if you're not going to use them long term, if you're getting new to the gym, if it's been a while, pay for a trainer for a couple of months. You know, scrape up the pennies, because a good trainer is worth their weight in gold. I never, unless I'm doing Peloton at home, I have a trainer with me at all times. I'm lucky enough to have one here, but I will guarantee you, Steve, my workout is 40% of what it normally is if I don't have a trainer. I just will not kick my own butt. It won't happen. I admit it. I just, my wife is much tougher than I am in the gym. I love it once I get going, but I got to have someone pushing me. And a workout partner makes all the difference in the world. When you have a buddy there, they help. You push each other. You know, you don't want to be the one that couldn't do it. So it helps.
So when I think about those HIIT workouts, you know, how you get so out of breath and exhausted. But one of the things you've really helped me understand is about ketone esters. And it's interesting how they really make you recover faster. They give you more energy. You perform better. Tell us some more about that.
So we did another little experiment this week with ketone esters with Maury. Of course, I made Maury do it because I'm not the one that does the exercises for time, because I'm just too old for that, even though Maury's only like 3 years younger than me, but he's in a lot better musculoskeletal shape than I am. So
before you tell us this story, but give us a little backstory on what ketone esters are.
Okay, so ketone esters are basically ketone bodies. They're only made in America by Ketone Aid. If you were to go there and buy them we do sell them in office. We can ship them to you, or you can go to ketoneaid.com, put in Resurge. They give you a little extra shipping for free. And you want to get the not the K1, the K4, which is the more concentrated ketone esters. Ketone esters are basically the most pure cellular fuel that you can get. I always equate it to, yeah, I like that. That is true right there. And so ketone esters are amazing. They're the best thing that I've added to my practice in a long time. It's the best thing I personally have added for myself. And I'll give you a couple of examples in it in a second. But you're giving your bodies it's like racing fuel for a car for a human. And it does taste bad. I agree with Glenda there. But if you get past the taste, it's going to increase your mental performance. It's going to increase it absolutely increases your athletic performance. It improves your immune system. They have a great medical study out, a real medical study, not one of these janky ones that actually showed how it helps people with COVID. What an amazing product ketone esters are. So it's just a small experiment, but I think a few times ago, I talked about how we were doing 150 wall balls for time, and Maury, our trainer, knocked off nearly a minute and a half off his time by using ketone esters. And this is a guy that does this all the time. He didn't just not do wall balls for 6 months. But this week we did the Filthy 50 again, which is 10 exercises, 50 reps, the same 10 exercises, and he knocked off, I think, over 2 minutes off his best time he'd ever had with ketone esters. And he said the difference was, and I agree with him, he's like, as I'm doing the burpees, don't get me wrong, they suck, but they don't suck nearly as bad as before, because your body just has this, it's like it has a reserve tank of fuel that all of a sudden kicks in and you're able to get through. I mean, Olympic athletes have been using ketone esters for a really long time, and it's an immediate thing. I mean, athletes will see the results with ketone esters immediately. I sell them in these little bitty bottles, and I'll say, hey, just take 3 little bottles home. Try the 3 bottles, and they come back pretty quickly for the big bottle, because they just want their own supply. The only negatives, they're not the cheapest thing on the market, and they do taste bad. And so my joke there is my brother came into town. He's about 63, and he's very trusting. He'll do anything I ask him to do. He's one of my actual best patients. And I said, here, I got this new product. Try it for me. And he took a swig of it, and he's like, oh, my God, it's the worst thing ever. But Crescenta, like my wife, who has ADHD, she has reasonably been able to get off of her ADHD medications with ketone esters.
Wow.
She still has it. There's still times that she uses it. But on good days where she's had a good workout and her nutrition's good with ketone esters, she's able to perform without it. And I've heard that from other people. And so I think it's an amazing thing to add to your regimen.
So here we're learning things that we can do to be more proactive and take control of our health, Dr. Kris. And so we've talked about all of these things are cheap things or cheaper things that we can do to impact without really taking any medication. And let's talk about peptides now. Tell us about give us a little story. What is peptide and what are some of the peptides that we should consider to maybe talk to our physician about?
So peptides are how I explain to patients, because what a peptide is basically a chain amino acid in a sequence. And I always tell the little example to my patients, if we go to a lumber yard and buy chain links alone, that's amino acids. If we put those chain links together, that's called an actual chain that we can like tow our vehicle with. That's a peptide. So once we put those amino acids in a certain sequence and bond them together, they become strong and they have a new function versus just chain links in a bucket. Now we actually have something that can do something for us, like pull a truck or something of that nature. And that's basically what peptides do. We have over 7,000 naturally occurring peptides in our body. The most common one that everyone, I'm sure, that's listening to this podcast has heard of is insulin. Insulin breaks down blood sugar, and insulin is absolutely a peptide. We have peptides that can tan you. We have peptides that can help heal ligament and tendon injuries quicker. We have peptides that can help with libido and sexual performance, and the list goes on and on. And we certainly have peptides that can help with general wellness and or weight loss. And so there's so many patients out there that are struggling to lose weight. They're doing a lot of things right, but they can't seem to get any results. And that's where everything that we're talking about today, in addition to labs and possibly hormones, that we have to piece this puzzle together to help them be able to lose weight. Because what I found is so many patients start to see a little success, but then they let themselves slip backwards, and then they get frustrated and they give up, or it doesn't happen as fast as they think it should. And that's where they need an experienced provider to walk with them on the journey of knowing what's normal, giving them realistic timeframes too. Like, hey, this is going to be a year. This isn't going to be 6 weeks, and there's going to be plateaus and gains and losses. And we just have to get through this together. And so that's just where I think that trying to do this on your own sometimes can be quite overwhelming.
So most of them are bioidentical. It's not a drug necessarily. They have very minimal side effects, if any. But one way you described it for me that really made a lot of sense is that you have a part of your body that makes these naturally, but they start to not make it as often as you age. And so peptide is like a signal that is sent to that part of the body and tells it to make more of it, like you did when you were young.
Yeah, so that's a great job. I agree. Yes, most of the peptides decrease with age, just like our hormones do, just like a lot of things do. And many of the peptides that we use are bioidentical. One of the things that separates peptides from traditional medications is a safety panel. Safety is tremendous. We've had very little issues with side effects with peptides, and that's not just our practice. I personally train with 25 other physicians very closely. Every physician will tell you the same thing, that adverse events are minimal to none. I've had so few, and there's not even the worst adverse events we've had took Benadryl to cure. And so they're just not a big deal. I always joke, amoxicillin is a great antibiotic, but I've had a lot worse stuff happen with amoxicillin than I have had with peptides. And so the key with peptides is knowing that you have the proper provider that knows which peptides to use and when and how to dose them. B, making sure your provider knows where to get those peptides from a reputable source. These days, you can get peptides on Facebook. That's not a joke. My phone's sitting in front of me. I will absolutely see peptide ads later today because it hears us talking and saying peptide. I'm sure one popped up. You don't want to buy from those sources. You actually, when you get them in, they say not for human consumption. I'm not using that. Yeah, they're real cheap. They're very, very cheap. And I think cheapness kind of tells you something as well. A reputable lab cannot produce these for very, very small prices. And I think the source is so important. So as a patient starts to look for a peptide provider, I think those are the things they have to think about. Who trained them? What's their knowledge base? Do they know which peptide to use when, and do they know how to dose it properly? Are they getting it from a good source? Can I trust that it's a safe peptide? Those are the most important factors to look at.
One of the ones that you talk about that everybody should be taking is one that you don't need a prescription for, that you can buy over the counter, and it's the BPC 157.
Yeah, what an amazing product. I actually lectured on BPC last week, and the company that I work with, BioT, they have what they call their Core 4, which is like vitamin D and DIM and some other things for hormones. And I actually have been talking to them that I think they should call it the Fab 5, although I don't know if Michigan will allow them to do that. But I think that BPC is a critical supplement. And as I tell patients, this was a prescription less than 6 months ago, an expensive prescription less than 6 months ago. There's only one manufacturer of legitimate BPC 157 over the counter, and that's actually BioT. And your BioT providers, myself included, have it on their shelves. You can't, unfortunately for the patient, you can't go into Walgreens and buy it. But it's an amazing product. It's made in the gastric juices of our stomach. It has a brain gut axis that it works on, so it can be very much neuroprotective. It can help with traumatic brain injuries, multiple sclerosis, dementia. I've seen great results with dementia with this product. It can work with those irritable bowel syndrome, healing up ulcers. Maybe if you do take anti-inflammatories, trying to help you from getting an ulcer. I've even seen it with alcohol, with people that drink too much alcohol and they're coming off of it. It does an amazing job there. But then its musculoskeletal aspect of it is just an amazing product. They're working on the ligament tendons and repair there of all of those things that you have listed. So it's a great product and just for general wellness. And so now that its cost has come down to a much more affordable price, it's one of those that I think that if a patient can afford it, they should absolutely considering it being one of their top 2 or 3 supplements that they're taking.
So what I love about these conversations, Dr. Kris, is we're learning how to, if we just eat a little bit better, if we do a little fasting, if we do a HIIT type of workout, and then this BPC 157, that's a big improvement over the way that people are doing things normally.
Yeah, and just the example, I mean, I have so many of these, but I just had a lady yesterday that came in and said, oh my God, like within a week, that changed my life. The BPC, it's like my body doesn't hurt anymore. I used to ache all over it, and it just like it's gone. And, versus taking anti-inflammatories, which can do a great job of making your aches and pains go away. But what is the negative of anti-inflammatories? They can really hurt your kidneys. Actually, they can kill your kidneys, and they can cause stomach ulceration and GI hemorrhage. What does BPC do with the kidneys? It's pro-kidneys. It helps kidney function. What does it do to the stomach? It's made in the stomach. It's pro-stomach. And so, you lose those bad effects of those anti-inflammatories, and that's why most people can't take them every day, but you can take BPC every day. And so it can be an amazing product for patients. And that's basically what I tell my patients it's like. It's like taking high-dose anti-inflammatories every day, but we take all the bad stuff away. Not very often in medicine do we get to do that.
Well, excellent. We've been talking with Dr. Kris of the Resurge Clinic. We've been covering peptides, age management, a way to be more proactive and take charge of your health. Generally, most physicians aren't aware of these things, but how nice is it that we can change certain things to make a big improvement? And so, Dr. Kris, you're like the voice for that crowd out there that wants to do better. And we really appreciate you. So give us a little teaser on what we want to talk about next week.
Well, I think next week we're going to step over into a little bit of a fun topic of beauty, and just again, I think it kind of falls into that new year, new you type thing. And we're going to introduce one of our newest additions to our practice, one of our new employees who actually has been a friend of mine for a long time. And I thought we might just talk a little bit about skincare tips, because I know I have vanity, with me, and I think that a lot of us do, and we're afraid to admit it. And I'm always amazed at how little people know about protecting their skin and simple programs that they can do to improve their skin. And the other thing I think it's really important, I'm always blown away by how little people know, but yet how much money they spend on things that don't work for their skin. And, especially the ladies, when they go to like Dillard's or one of these places, and the young lady talks them into taking all this different stuff that, I'm sorry, but that young lady doesn't know what they're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so when they can because a lot of people with high-end skincare get scared away sometimes by the price. What they don't realize is that you use very small amounts of really good skincare. So like, okay, maybe it is $40 more for that, but it's going to last you 3 times as long. And that's the part that patients don't understand. Like a face wash, like a really high-end face wash, we use like a tiny little pearl in our whole face, where some of this stuff, you got to fill your handful of all this stuff. So those are things that we'll talk about next week, and have Lorinda on with us, and just kind of talk about some of our thoughts and theories there.
Yeah, I've been seeing some stuff about peptides for skin as well.
Yes, absolutely.
And some peptides that help you grow your hair back. So it's not just for ladies, this conversation next week.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to talk about hair products, the Illuminate. I always want to call it Illuminate. It's Illuminate. Evidently, I'm not the only one that does that, but Illuminate, which is a peptide cream for the face and neck that's really easy to do, guys. It makes a tremendous difference. It is a way to knock off a few years off your look, and you don't have to get needles if you don't want to get Botox, that sort of thing. It's not meant to replace Botox, but it augments it, or for a person that just doesn't want to go that far. So, yeah, I think we have some interesting stuff we can talk about next week, a little bit lighter topics that maybe patients will think are a little bit fun to talk about.
All right, Dr. Kris, this has been fun. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Thanks for your comments, your likes, and send us your questions. If you got a question for Dr. Kris that you'd like to answer, or maybe a particular topic that you'd like the show to be focused on, let us know. You can reach out to the Resurge Clinic at theresurgeclinic.com. Dr. Kris is available. Where can they connect with you, Dr. Kris?
They're always welcome to email me directly at Dr. Kris with a K at theresurgeclinic.com.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Kris.
Thanks, Steve.
And that's a wrap.